Good morning and thank you for tuning in to Market Insights. I am Lavina Emma. So this beautiful Tuesday morning, we will discuss a very critical issue that's affecting us all, and that's the impact of climate change on food and agriculture. Now, food and agricultural prices are really high in Nigeria right now, and climate change, as we know, is no longer a distant threat. It is a harsh reality that's already affecting our daily lives, and one of the most vulnerable sectors in Nigeria that's affected by this climate change is agriculture. For example, rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events are all taking a toll on our crop yields and food security, and ultimately our household budgets. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are solutions, and they start with climate change adaptation in agriculture. So by adopting a sustainable farming practices, investing in climate resilient crops, and also supporting smallholder farmers, we can build a more resilient food system that benefits everyone. So join me as we delve into this critical issue of climate change adaptation. Prices of food items, something that is really affecting everybody, whether it's staple foods or imported foods. For example, things like yam, tomatoes, gari, these prices are really, really high right now. So we need to find a way to adapt to this. If it's a case of our weather agency partnering with farmers to tell them on the right season to plant some certain food items. So joining me to discuss further on this is Professor Oluseye Ajuwon. He's an economist and he's joining us virtually this morning. So welcome to Market Insights, Professor Ajuwon.
I am not yet a prof. I'm still Dr. Oluseye Ajuwon. Thank you for wishing me well.
Yeah, Ajuwon, I've taken notes of that. Thank you for correcting me. So I'm glad to have you on the program this morning, and it's always great seeing you on our program. So, yes, the impact of climate change on agriculture and food prices. As you know, climate change is no longer a distant threat in our country. It's a harsh reality that is affecting our lives every day. So what would you recommend as to possible steps that farmers can take to adapt to this climate change right now, so that they can know the right time to plant food items and they won't be affected by things like drought or harsh flooding that can kill off all the crops? So what are your recommendations for this?
When it comes to the issue of climate change, we all know that is the world over that is affecting, everything, and including planting and harvesting. And so if I'm going to advise farmers in this regard, my advice would be that we are now living in a digital world now, and the weather forecast and all those things are now available on our mobile devices. So we need to make sure that we acclimatize ourselves, with the weather forecast, and on your phone on daily basis, it gives us daily forecast. And when you look at it, you can get even for a week on your phone if you click on it. But beyond that, you can really get the weather forecast, so that a month, 2 months, 3 months ahead, you'll be able to know, and to some extent, the weather forecast has been, say, at some level of accuracy these days. So we really need to acclimatize ourselves with the weather forecast so that you will be able to plan properly and know when to plant, and so that these weather forecasts will not affect us. Like all these flood waves that we are expecting. The country has already told us, all the local governments, that is going to affect 31 states and 146 local governments. So the farmers in all these regions need to understand, and if there is need to ask questions, what they need to do to ensure that they are not being negatively affected with this flood. and what are the kind of plants they need to plant in the areas that this flood is being expected, so that they will not lose out on their farm plants.
That's Dr. Ajuwon. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. Yes, the farmers need to be prepared, but you do realize that some of these farmers live in the rural areas. It's not very easy for them to get access to smartphones and to be checking the weather forecast every day. But if we look at food prices right now, let's just talk about that briefly. The statistics are quite alarming. Food inflation is at 40% now in Nigeria, and for perhaps let's picture this scenario now. Middle age or a family that ends at this middle income level now. Now, how would they cope now with rising food prices, and is leaving many households, particularly those who are operating on that minimum wage level, with tough choices to make, whether they should pay for rent or pay for these food items, is making them wonder how they can get access to, in future, how do we get access to proteins, because that's quite expensive also. Now, do we sacrifice quality for quantity? So these are the questions the common man will be asking on the street, like how can he cope with this rising food prices? Yes, we've talked about this issue before, but with the rains coming, one would think that it will improve on our food harvest right now, but sometimes it gets too, the rains are too heavy and it kills the crops instead. So in the event a farmer or perhaps somebody that wants to purchase food items in large quantities, like how would they cope during this period? What do you recommend both to the farmers and to these middle income earners, to the families that are earning just the minimum wage?
If to talk about the future, as an economist, I will say that the future is very, very bleak. It's not what I'm seeing as an economist is not palatable at all. We are going to face a serious, but I strongly believe that God is enabled. So let's leave that and talk as an economist. You see, the situation we are now, I need to let people understand as an economist, the future is very, very bleak, especially when it comes to the issue of food. There, I can see serious problem, confronting us in the near future. And you see, we need to be better prepared for, what is coming. And you see, the way to go about it is, number one, everybody, whether you are rich or you are super rich, please, whatever food materials at your disposal, ensure that nothing is wasted. It's very, very important. Then, we are no more in the area where, in the era where, people can eat to their full now. So whether you are rich or not is not an issue now. The future is very, very bleak. And we need to make sure that we conserve any food materials at our disposal with the utmost care. Because believe me sincerely, the future is, as an economist, I'm not talking as a spiritualist or whatever, but as an economist, what I can see in the future is not palatable. So that's number one. We have to make sure that we conserve whatever we have. Then number two, you see, at individual level, everybody have to ensure that they look for alternatives. For instance, people are now saying that, when tomato is no more available, there are cucumber, people are going for cucumber, or people are going for tomato paste. Whatever alternatives that you can think of, and I'm sure, with the information available now, all manner of informations are flying. So people need to start thinking of alternatives to any and everything you are using that is now getting too expensive. So we need to start looking for all alternatives. It is very, very important. So that's number two thing. Then number three, I think the government also has a role to play during this period, and that is All tractors must be rolled out. It is not about, making profit or whatever now. All tractors must be rolled out. All land must be cultivated, and everything that can be planted, should start being planted. And at the individual level, we've been introduced to this modern farming now, that you can put soil in the sacks and start planting, even right inside your compound or on your roof or your veranda. So everybody should as well be encouraged to ensure that we take this seriously. In fact, if possible, all our flower pots should be converted to planting of vegetables instead of, planting flowers. Yes, flowers add beauty to the house, but I think the situation we are facing now and in the near future encourage that we should plant crops that are beneficial, as in that are consumable, because flowers too are beneficial, but that are consumable is very, very important for us to go that route than, planting flowers now. And, that's my advice for now.
Dr. Ajuwon. Okay, I'm also joined online by an agriculturist. His name is Azeez Oluwole Saheed. He's joining us virtually this morning. So, can you hear me, Azeez Oluwole Saheed?
Yes, good morning. I can hear you.
Have you on
Good
What
morning.
Market Insights. Thank you for joining me this morning. We're talking about the impacts of climate change in Nigeria on agricultural prices, agricultural produce, and also on the prices of food items in the country now. So these weather patterns are affecting the farmers. In addition, the prices that they give to the market traders also affecting the final consumer at the end of the day. So now, what would you suggest? What kind of sustainable agricultural practices would you recommend to combat this climate change and to also enable farmers to adapt to this current climate change right now?
Well, thank you very much. I love the first speaker. The first speaker made a lot of points which resonate well with me. You see, when we're talking about food security, we want to achieve three main things. We want to make sure that food is socially available. That is to say, anybody, regardless of status, can access the food. We want to be sure that it's economically available, meaning that people have money, they can buy it. It's not too expensive. And the third one is that it is physically available. That, okay, if we have the money, can we even see the food to buy? These are the three pillars of food security. And in order to achieve this, let me quickly jump on climate change. You see, the climate change issue is something that is happening, and our control on it is almost not there. So activities are going to drive climate change. As a matter of fact, agriculture itself contributes a lot. It's one of the biggest contributors to climate change, deforestation and the like, use of water and the like. But if we are going to mitigate or ameliorate the effect, there are some things that I am looking at we have to do in order to ensure that we have food to eat. Until we, I always make this joke, until we begin to drink crude or eat SIM card or eat Wi-Fi, we still have to make sure that we work on food. And food security is the fundamental of every form of security: physical security, political security, social security, economical security, health security, environmental security. Whatever security you want to talk about, you can achieve it without food security. So if our food system fails us, everything called security will eventually fail, like Dr. earlier said. And it also means that even our economy will start crashing and crumbling very fast. So we need to take some action. And one of the things I look at is to approach agriculture on commercial scale. I know I've heard smallholder farmers, 80% of the contribution contribute to food security and the like. I understand all of these statistics. But the question is, what impact is our food production even having on our economy and on our food security as a nation, having 77% of our population in agriculture. Most of the people who do agriculture do small-scale secondary roles. Agriculture plays secondary income system for them. Perhaps they don't even make money, they just have it as hobby. Until we begin to encourage large-scale and commercial-scale agriculture, we will not be able to tap fully into the benefit of agriculture. Now, why do I mention commercial scale? We are talking about the impact of climate change. To mitigate this, we need to work on things like having irrigation, sustainable technology and methodologies. Doctor mentioned things about technology, not just having weather forecast. I'm talking about there are a lot of technology now that actually do triangulation of your weather, of your soil profile, and see type of seed you are planting, and put it together and give you a suggestive approach as to what seed you should plant, what quantity, what yield do you need, and what procedures are you supposed to do. Like, technology has gone that far. But you know the problem about this technology? It is expensive. They are developed by Europeans, Americans, Chinese, Asians. Very expensive. So apart from the worry that you have that maybe it may not enter the rural area, I also have a worry that even if it's anywhere it is very difficult to afford them. So people have to work on a scale that can pay for such services. Smallholder farmers won't be paying $100, $120 for some services when the whole size of his farm is barely $100. So these are things, and we have a lot of tech guys here. What are we developing? Fintech, and other things. So and even the social and the ones that go into agricultural technology in Nigeria, check how much finance goes into it. In 2022, which was the last data I have, only 0.5% of the capital raised went into agriculture or agri-tech. Everything was oil and gas and technology and telecommunications. So we need to scale up our approach to agriculture. How do we do that? I say something that sounds always callous when I say that small-scale agriculturists or farmers will somewhat be obsolete. They will be phased out. Just the same way recharge card sellers lost business to bankers. But it's callous, but it's just a basic truth. Because there is something, the basic need of every living creature is survival. They want to survive. When our hunger gets to a state of emergency, we will have to take action that will make us want to survive. And that means that we will now face agriculture on a scale that smallholder farmers might not be able to meet up. So how can we keep the smallholder farmers in business while we are going commercial? Then we can be talking about cooperative farming, cluster farming, and the like. And I'm not coming from the angle of anchor borrower scheme, which failed. I'm not interested in all of the statistics that made it fail, but I'm talking about something like that, group of people working together to reduce costs so they can have economy of scale. And by that way, we can overall bring down the cost of production, because economic accessibility of food is a critical pillar of food security. So that people can now produce large scale. Because your cost of production goes down, your access to technology and better methodologies increases, and then your yield improves. When your yield improves, that means you can now sell better. That is another thing. Then another thing that I think we are not looking at in the country is how to reduce our post-harvest losses. So food waste, food loss problem we have. We have food loss, we have food waste. We waste food right from the farm to our houses. And this same food that we waste, we dump them outside. Now, what do? They emit gases, carbon dioxide, methane gases. These are greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases go back to the ozone layer, deplete it, and then, as the theory says, that we are now contributing even to climate change. What do? We need to look at circular economy. We need to take circular economy much more seriously. Now, we generate about 34 million metric tons of waste as a country. 16% of these waste are organic waste. These organic waste emit carbon dioxide and methane every day. And these waste are convertible to fertilizers. They are convertible to animal feed, animal protein. All we just need to do, there's a lot of technologies. Countries that do not have those problems that we have are also taking the action already. So I am of the opinion that we should start looking at circular economy. The waste from one farm becomes the input of the other as a critical agricultural practice, not just as an. I hear people talk about integrated farming. When they say integrated farming, when you go to the integrated farm, what you see is just a mixed cropping system or mixed farming system. Integrated farming indicates that something comes out of something as waste and becomes an input in the other place. And this is very critical. So this waste that we've dumped, this waste that we throw away, we will have to utilize them as resources in some other farming procedure. And then it means that apart from the commercial scale, we should start approaching agriculture from ecosystem approach, meaning that the waste user, utilizer of one waste, is producing an input for another organization or another farming sector, and they are co-located or very close so that logistical implication becomes reduced. This has to be supported and tactfully planned through policies and guidance of the government. Making it the third one, the government policy is very, very important. So government needs to really look at these critically, rather than just making all the noise and doing the political noise up and down and trying to win people over. We really need to look at something that actually genuinely solves the problem of the citizen. I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Azeez Oluwole Saheed, you really went in-depth into the issue of climate change and how it's affecting, if I'm allowed to say, our grocery bills here in Nigeria. It's something that is very, very key. Thank you for that. Okay, now looking at the implications of this, yes, you went in-depth into this. You also provided some solutions to this also. And yes, the government has a very huge role to play in all of this. Now, before we talk about the government's role in this, could you just, your thoughts on this as an expert? I understand you also created the Agricultural Social Entrepreneurship Foundation to help farmers in particularly female farmers in the rural areas now. So now with this climate change right now, in terms of food security and nutrition, now what steps would you recommend to people living in the rural communities, how they can mitigate the impacts of this in terms of how climate change will affect them, in terms of how they feed, getting the right amounts of nutrients into their bodies? So what would you recommend that they do in terms of food security and also to mitigate the effects of climate change? So your recommendations, Mr. Oluwole Azeez.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can you unmute your microphone, please?
Yes, I've unmuted. There will be a little lag. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm assuming that even this program that we are on, a lot of people in the rural area are not watching to start with. So if I'm making recommendations for this to solve their problem right now, I'm assuming that they are not listening. This is what I think should happen. From my experience with farmers, without any prejudice, small older farmers in the rural area are very stubborn. They have a slogan, "Now so we dey do am." This is how it had been. My father, my grandfather have been doing it before you were born. So this is hard to change. But for us to make a change, the enlightened persons, we have to take this to them and cluster them and work with them in a cooperative with evidences and proof. To work with them individually and tell them, do this, do that, no. Even when they start it, they are not patient enough to sustain these practices. So we need to glamorize agriculture in the urban area. Our youth are busy shaking bomb on TikTok. They are busy being arrested for Yahoo. I don't have proof that they are Yahoo. They are busy being disturbed here and there, looking for music and playing bets. If this sector becomes really glamorized, maybe through education, sensitization, financial injection, training and orientation, and these people are the ones that will take this into the rural area. Because whether we like it or not, the rural farmers, eventually their impact will begin to reduce with time. Maybe 10 years, maybe 15, 20 years time. So the youth that we have now that are educated are needed to be empowered and encouraged to go right into the field and begin to cluster these people in a cooperative approach to agriculture, providing them the solution that enhances their productivity. When people have better money, they will listen eventually. It's a friction, but I'm talking from experience. When you go into the farm to meet the rural guys, they are very hostile. They will come to lecture, they will listen, but they won't do what you ask them to do. Someone has to look over their shoulder. Someone has to show them and mentor them, and it has to be business for both parties. So I am of the opinion that the transition that we have had in how we used to do agriculture to the modernization of agricultural practices, we need to get this youth that are able to absorb this knowledge and interpret it into application. They have to go into the field right there. Why am I saying youth? I'm not having any prejudice towards old people. I'm in the middle. You know, I'm of the opinion that the young guys have a lot of energy and they will be able to, go through this tedious procedure than for a man that had worked all his life to use his old age where he's supposed to start resting to start sweating it all over again. So that's why we need to look at our youth population, empower them, encourage them, reorient them, and then they go back into the rural area. But approaching this rural guy, you can tell them over and again, they will do it maybe one season, they will do it maybe half a season, and then they will always relapse to what they used to know. That has paid them over years. Your new one is a gamble that they are always skeptical to take. Maybe that makes a little sense to you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Oluwole Saheed. But there's something I want to point out, please, that we don't use foul language on the television with your reference to TikTok and what young ladies are doing on TikTok. We don't use any foul language on TV, please. But thank you for your input on this. Yes, we need to make farming more attractive to young people, both in the urban and rural areas. So thank you for this. Dr. Ajuwon, are you still online with us? Okay, yes, so this is for both Dr. Ajuwon and Mr. Oluwole Saheed. Yes, it's on the government's role in all of this. Now, how can government and policymakers support climate change adaptation in agriculture through policy and regulatory framework? So how can the government come into play? What kind of policies, what kind of more friendly policies can they create for farmers to adapt to this to the effects of climate change right now? So I'll start with Dr. Ajuwon first of all.
When it comes to government policies and what government needs to do, people always think that government have access to unlimited resources, which is a mistake that we need to start changing. On the part of government, a lot of policies have been put in place, especially with reference to climate change, and a lot is still ongoing. Have been involved and all those things. But when it comes to the agricultural aspect of it, the climate change issue is not just about Nigeria; it's the whole world, and the world is looking at it, and they are handing over the responsibility for each country, and they are monitoring it. So that is another discussion. So I don't want to go there. But on the issue of agriculture, what government can do, like I mentioned earlier, government needs to, like Mr. Azeez said, government needs to help the farmers, especially the ones in the rural area. Like all the information I said that is needed, they have to ensure that all those informations are getting across to them. And, farmers listen to televisions, radio stations through their transistors. And, government knows how to get them. And I'm sure, we are the one thinking that the informations are not getting to the farmers, but I'm sure the informations are getting to the farmers well, because all these weather forecasts, all the flood, flash, I'm sure the farmers would have gotten all the informations. So outside just getting the informations across to the farmers, I think the government also needs to do more than that. Like all the technological skilled agricultural farming that Mr. Azeez spoke about, I think we don't just allow the information to be available, but as well to ensure that it's being implemented by the farmers. When you look at it properly, there are ways by which you can get things across to people that they will take it. No, everybody doesn't like change. We are always, resistant to change, but that does not mean that when we see the reason for us to change, that we will not change. We will change. It's just the ways we pass across. For instance, when you are training people, you might think that they are understanding you. If you are training them and you're not practicalizing it, you might not have finished your training. So it goes beyond just, training them, passing the information across, but as well, you have to ensure that that knowledge is already, impacted in them. Once they get it and they see the benefit in it, nothing will stop them, from implementing it.
So much for that, Dr. Ajuwon. Okay, Mr. Saheed, are you still here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
So we're talking about the government's policies and what they can do to actually support this climate change adaptation. So how can governments and policy makers introduce very friendly policies that could help farmers to adapt during this climate change situation?
Okay, thank you very much. Before I go to respond to this, I just want to
okay, can you hear me, Mr. Saheed?
I can hear you. I'm speaking. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, I'm speaking. Okay, let me continue. So I first want to acknowledge the feedback you gave about the foul language. For want of better language, I wasn't judging or derogatory, but I didn't know how else to express that. So I didn't come from the angle of tearing anyone down, and I didn't consider that foul or derogatory. So let me quickly go towards what I look at. When I'm talking about agribusiness success, agricultural success, there are three things I look at. I look at, on one angle, technology and methodology. When I say technology, I'm talking about technology not necessarily from the bling-bling dimension. Not all the time something so sophisticated. It could just be some simple, even traditional technology or methodology that would change the game, but they are going to be adaptive to the reality of the challenges we are having. Now, in order to achieve that, you need finance. So that takes me to the second angle, which means finance, understanding of financial intelligence from the agricultural perspective, understanding how to get the right funding, the patient funding that you need for agriculture and the size of funding. And above all, there is a very critical dimension, which is if you put money or technology in the hand of the wrong person, it will still squander it. So I call that third one character, the character of the farmer. So when we are talking as a nation, I think that we should look at these 6 steps. First one, I'm looking at financial and fiscal policy, where I can hardly point out a bank that is very eager to give a well-structured agricultural loan. Some banks are doing it, but but not the way you would have expected, because they are in business too, and they are not out to lose their money. So they are in business. So the government needs to make access to finance better for agricultural purposes. We may need to restructure how we approach agriculture and design. Okay, and the government doesn't have to throw the money away also. The second one is waste management policies. You see, the waste is constituting menace to the climate, and even to the agricultural sector. It's degrading our soil, polluting our waters, and the like. We need to begin to look at that as a very, very critical dimension for food security. Market access. Imagine that your neighboring countries can export their food or can even sell their food locally. Locally in Nigeria, we have discrimination even against our own produce. Tomatoes, they will say one tomato is better than the other, that is this, that is that. We need the government needs to come up with policies like maybe agro board and the like that can help with market access. Farmers will be encouraged to farm if they have access to the market. And for market access to even be there, that means we must have storage system. So let me put infrastructure from the road to storage system. And imagine farming in the north and bringing it down, maybe tomatoes, for example, and you lose 67% of that. in transit. That is what the statistics say. Now, 67% in transit. The remaining 3% has to be bought at the price that can cover up for your cost of production, logistics, and perhaps a little profit on it. So who's going to buy it? The eaters have to buy it because they have to eat. So they have to pay that money. So food prices continue going up. So we need to look into infrastructure. I am not going to assess government or say, okay, this government is doing this or doing that. I don't do that at all. But I think it's something that we need to really look at. Then standardization of our food output. Standardization. You can imagine fruit juice company in Nigeria. I know one or two that folded up, but the one that are surviving, having to source their concentrate or juice from outside the country because you don't even have a uniform production. If you buy oranges from different sources, you're going to have different tastes, and you have to maintain a taste for your product. And not just that, from the meat. We talk about meat, even fishes. So we need to start working towards standardizing agricultural fruit. These are long term. They are nothing you can achieve in 3, 4, 5 years. So, but it's in the hands of the government, not NGO, not people, not just businessmen, but the government has to start, reorienting people, empowering them towards this. And the last one is orientation and awareness. We need to continue to let people understand the nexus between climate change and food security, and perhaps by further extension, how other circumstances or other situations or phenomena link one to one another and lead to our ultimate survival, which is food security. Maybe from our waste disposal and management, maybe to our logistical practices, and every other thing, we need to start letting people know the connection between amongst our actions and decisions and how it implies on our food security and, of course, climate change prior to that. Thank you very much.
Oluwole Saheed, thank you for your input into this. Yes, you did say a whole lot. But there was, when you mentioned farmers getting access to loans to help them, to aid them in the farming process, there's been, if farmers come together to form a cooperative, investors are more committed to giving them a loan as opposed to when it's just maybe one farmer or two farmers. So as an agricultural, someone who is very passionate about agriculture, working as you have an NGO that we also work with farmers in different communities. Now, I'm sure you have encouraged them to come together to form a cooperative to make it easier for them to get access to loans. So that being said, I want to ask you this now. So the financial burden of implementing climate change adaptation strategies, do you think it falls too heavily on small-scale farmers in developing countries like Nigeria, or it's just, do you think it falls too heavily on the small-scale farmers in developing countries? Let me just ask you this first.
Yes, I think it falls on the head of the small-scale farmers and the consumers.
The government, because the government gives policies every now and then, are you trying to say they are not implementing the policies they have been making in terms of, for agricultural policies, that is?
No, I'm not saying they are not implementing. But whatever policies come out, whatever campaign that we heard and the like, the question is who feel the brunt on the long run? Our food prices are going up. Smallholder farmers are shutting down their farms. A lot of poultries are shut down. A lot of piggeries are shut down. A lot of small farms are shut down. It means that it is bearing a lot on their financial. So the government probably never runs that dry of funds, probably. I'm aware of people like countries like Sri Lanka, but I mean, what I'm saying is probably. But individuals who own small businesses who don't necessarily feel the impact of those policies or the results in their farm, they continue to struggle, hoping that they were going to overcome their challenges till they eventually, lose out completely. And if a smallholder farmer eventually farms and got its produce to the market, it's not going to go to the market and do charity. It would definitely demand a price. Now, if it is the only one, the market forces will force its price down and it will go back home with losses. If it is common to all the farmers, the market forces will stabilize the price so that they can go on with certain prices, meaning that the consumers will eventually have to pay to eat. So it always boils down to these two levels. The consumers, first of all, pay a whole lot, and then the smallholder farmers. When you begin to cluster the smallholder farmers together, yes, like you mentioned, they can access better finance if they know how to go about it. And when they access the better finance, they can improve on their cost of production and on their yield, which can drastically improve their profit margin. All of these are possibilities. But the question is, how many smallholder farmers are actually being clustered? Who is clustering them? How are they being clustered? Who is managing them? How are they having access? All of this administrative system is either run by government or by individual entrepreneur who find a business around it. So these are opportunities that we can explore as we move forward. But my own opinion is that the consumers and the smallholder farmers are the ones feeling the heat the most. Thank you.
For this, thank you. And by all of this, does this also increase food insecurity in our country? With all you have said so far, does this also increase food insecurity in the country when all this falls on the shoulders of the small-scale farmers? So in the end, yes, like you mentioned, the small-scale farmers and the consumers have to, the final consumer has to pay for this. So this is also increasing our food insecurity in our country. So what steps would you take to recommend this?
Okay, what step would I take to recommend this? Hello?
Okay, let me, hello, Dr. Ajuwon, are you still with us, please? I'm not really hearing what Mr. Saheed is saying right now.
In fact, it's asking you that the question you have thrown out is not clear, that you need to frame the question appropriately.
Just the last statement.
Okay, you were going to say something.
I think having
Okay, so now I was talking about the rising cases of food insecurity right now. So now with everything that you have said, yes, the final price of the final burden of implementing climate change strategies or climate adaptation strategies, now like you mentioned, it falls on the shoulders of the small scale farmers and ultimately to the final consumer that will buy the farmers' produce. So now this has also led to food insecurity in our country. So what steps would you take to fix this situation? So let me first of all start with Mr. Saheed, then I'll move to Dr. Ajuwon.
Okay, thank you very much for that brilliant question. I'm going to answer you in two ways. Number one, food security is everybody's business. It is not just government, because it is easy to sit somewhere and continue to judge and tear down the government. Individuals, entrepreneurs, risk takers. I understand, I'm very aware of the fact that ease of doing business is critical to encourage anyone to go towards going into any business. These I'm aware of. Personally, I have been to agriculture and I've had my own fair share of big losses in the agricultural sector. Because when you are farming and you feel you're just alone and your government is not even having your back, you could see people not necessarily venturing into that sector. But entrepreneurs, we need to encourage entrepreneurs to come up into the agricultural space. These entrepreneurs, when they come with diverse, let me use the word wisdom, creativity, ingenuity, you'll be surprised how things can begin to take shape within the next 10 to 30 years. That's the first thing. Now, talking about what steps am I taking? Well, after having a built experience across aquaculture to vegetable farming, tomato farming, and at the moment, by August, we'll commence training of people. I am of the opinion that training, mind engineering, is a critical component of nation building. So we partner with some other 15 other companies towards training about 100,000 Africans on waste management, circular economy around agriculture. Why this?
Saheed, sorry, I'm so sorry about this. Yes, I'll have to round up your final words on this issue so that I can take some final words from Dr. Ajuwon, please. Okay, let me move to Dr. Oluseye Ajuwon right now.
Yeah. Okay, on the issue of the food insecurity, it's what everybody can see. And even if you cannot see it, you're already feeling it, through your pocket. So the idea of what everybody knows is a critical issue. Now, my advice, on how to combat this problem facing us is, number one, we have to ensure that people understand the critical situation of what is confronting us. And with that, everybody needs to take action. That is very, very important, that we all need to take action. And what are the actions that we need to take as an individual? Number one, I've said it, we have to make sure that wastage is, is reduced as much as possible to its barest minimum. Then number two, now farming is what everybody needs to go into, no matter, the scale, whether at the minimal, small scale, whatever it is, whether you are going to be using SOUQ, everybody needs to go into farming to ensure that, we increase, because no matter how little it is, whatever you are producing, you are adding to the basket, even if it is what you are going to eat in your house. By the time you are, harvesting what you are eating, you are as well reducing what we will buy in the market and making more food available to all. So all of us, we need to, start converting our flower pots into, cross planting, and that government, should see this as a critical issue. I'm sure, ways by which government is going about this is, they are fighting the insecurity. They are also ensuring that, they are spending a lot on the provision of infrastructure, especially, the road, So, but government needs to be, to do more. Especially government needs to look at the area, where wastages are in the system and make sure that, they block all those wastages, so that the little resources available can be plowed back into the system to ensure that we maximize whatever resources at their disposal.
Dr. Oluseye Ajuwon, for joining me this morning on Market Insights as we talked about how climate change is affecting agriculture and food prices in Nigeria. Many thanks for your contributions to this discussion. I also want to thank Azeez Oluwole Saheed. He's an CEO of Farm Connect, and he's also very passionate about agriculture. He also created an NGO, the Agricultural Social Entrepreneurship Foundation, and he's very passionate about farming and agriculture in Nigeria. So many thanks for your contributions to this discussion on climate change and agriculture and food prices in Nigeria. It's been great having you gentlemen on the program, and I look forward to having you again on Market Insights.
Thank you.
Let's take it. Okay, you're welcome. You are welcome. Okay, let's look at the money markets this morning, the CBN rates and the parallel market rates this morning for the dollar, pound sterling, and euro. So for the CBN rate for the dollar this morning is 1,444 naira to $1, and at the parallel market it's 1,510 naira to $1. And for the pound sterling, at the CBN rate is 1,853 naira to £1 sterling. At the parallel market, it's 1,900 naira to £1 sterling. For the euro, the CBN rate is 1,578 naira to €1. The parallel market rate is 1,600 naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. As usual, the parallel market rates are higher than the CBN rates. So that's our time this morning on Market Insights as we discuss this topic on climate change, how it's affecting agriculture and food prices in Nigeria. And my guest gave a lot of solutions to this issue and how the government also has very big role to play in all of this. Many thanks for watching the program. I'm your host, Lavina Emma. Do stay tuned to the news update on SOUQ News Television.